Okay, so nice artificial way for me to sit here.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, what are you using, an Apple? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually still a 4S. I don't know what you think of the new technology they've got, but
You know what, I believe it or not, I'm still a BlackBerry guy.
really?
And you know what, I love this. I love this, was it Z10 or Q10?
Yeah?
And I'm seriously bummed that these guys have hired a banker for strategic advice. You know? Like, I'm seriously bummed. Like, this is a great device. Great device. A little late, but great device.
I have an intern working with me from France who's also totally committed, and he's so sad to see the way things are going.
You know, it reminds me of the Palm a bit. You know, people
Yes.
were so married to it, but
Yep.
these guys had it. You know, and I don't quite understand how it all went off the rails. But who knows? Maybe it's not over. But sure, it's tough to hang on to subscribers when you let people know the company's for sale.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, they are kind of not handling things brilliantly.
Yeah.
So just a quick background. I don't know if they told you anything, but
Nothing.
I have a weekly podcast sponsored by IBM
Okay.
in which I interview Canadian companies that are starting to market themselves more effectively online, or experts who have something to contribute to that conversation.
Fantastic.
So interviewed a range of companies and looking a lot at entrepreneurs, although I'm also looking at some that are larger.
Yeah.
So I guess in our time together, there are two issues I'd like to briefly discuss with you. One is your thoughts about why the Canadian marketplace is still so slow about getting online and still so reluctant.
Yeah.
And the other, you mentioned it briefly in your talk this morning about the need for setting goals, but also for setting process to support those goals. And I'm becoming increasingly interested in that whole process piece. So those are my two issues, I guess.
The first issue is are you talking about the Canadian investment space, or are you talking about
Canadian
technology?
companies themselves, retailers in particular,
Yeah.
are very reluctant to embrace e-commerce and to accept that that's the way the world is going. And
See, that's news to me.
really,
Well,
you
I
don't
didn't-
think so?
I didn't. Well, and I'm not disagreeing. I just didn't realize the statistic, because when you think about it, Canada has led the way in internet penetration.
Absolutely.
Forever.
I know. That's why it's
Very
surprising.
And I didn't know that the retailers weren't responding. Now you're not so much talking about branch offices of U.S. retailers. You're talking about Canadian homegrown retailers.
Yes.
That's fat. I didn't know that.
Well, in 2001, the Retail Council actually closed their e-commerce committee, figuring it was a fad. And they just this year got one going again.
Wow.
So I think that says a lot.
That says a lot. Well, it's good that they're going again because it's all headed that way. But is it the retailer? How much is the retailer, and how much is the telcos for payment methods and Shopify's in the world, right?
Yes.
We are leading in some areas.
Yes.
Like Shopify's a
Yeah, I just
global
interviewed
company.
them the other day, yeah.
Fantastic company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enabling e-commerce.
Yep.
So maybe the bricks and mortars are dragging their heels, but in other ways we're leading the way. Right?
So from what you've seen as an investor, you feel pretty optimistic that there are more Shopify's and Canadian success stories brewing, a lot of
Well, I
them?
feel more optimistic after you telling me that we're lagging behind, because it means that there's
Lots of room to grow.
Lots of room to grow. But in general, I'm very bullish on how innovative we are as entrepreneurs. It's news to me that the bricks and mortar retailers are lagging that innovation or that adoption of the innovation. But I don't think we are lagging behind on the telco side. I think we're keeping pace with alternative billing and as we mentioned earlier, Shopify in terms of enabling online e-commerce. So it's news to me that the bricks and mortars have a ways to go, and that's great because it's inevitable. So they better get on it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I could fill you in on the data, but
I believe you.
yeah,
I believe you.
yeah. So, well, let's move then a little bit to this other issue
Sure.
about process, because one of the things that I'm researching a lot now is everyone's talking about how important it is to have great customer service. Absolutely, totally true. but I don't see a lot of discussion about the background process that you need to make that
How.
happen.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that based on your experience
I
with?
have a lot of thought on it because it's, it's one of my favorite topics, and it's, one of my earliest lessons in business was the process that goes into the fancy words that back up the fancy words.
Mm-hmm.
The process is a lot of work.
Yes.
And it's a lot of front-end work, and it's a lot of monitoring and coming back and making sure that work is still intact and pivoting when you learn new information.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship between that process work and the outcome is often not clear to people running businesses. Intuitively, they get it, but if their goal is to reduce call time by 2 minutes, they're hiring faster talkers rather than realizing that it's systemic.
Right.
You got to tear it down and you've got to build it up. And yes, the type of people that you hire and what you pay them and how you treat them and all that is important.
Mm-hmm.
But getting them enrolled in the process so that they're vested. Like, how many times have you called customer service and become frustrated because you found that the person isn't vested in your problem?
If you can even get through to them.
It's clear. Well, yeah, and that can be a technology issue. That can be a staffing to match peaks and valleys and the measurement of all that. But I think what you were kicking off with was it just doesn't happen. You just don't wake up and say, I want my customer service to be friendly, helpful, and concise.
Yeah.
And, it's a massive amount of work in that example that has to go into it. And it's not unlike building a company culture that, wouldn't necessarily just focus on customer service. It's about productivity. It's about laying down systems that your people know when they show up to work that they're there for a bigger purpose than just the day.
Yes. Yeah.
That goes to vision. Why are we here?
Right. Yeah.
And in particular this year, if I achieve this, here's where this achievement fits in the overall vision. So I'm part of the process.
Yep.
I'm part of the success.
Right.
And rewarding people for hitting those milestones. I remember, when we first started talking about performance management, when we were getting to a size at Lavalife where it mattered, we had big debates about, well, the receptionist doesn't impact EBITDA. So why is the receptionist having part of her pay tied to how much money the overall company makes? And
right.
Heaven forbid, we're going to have to share our profit with the receptionist. Right. And that's such old school thinking in my view. The receptionist can absolutely. It's not so much that her supplies management, for example, or his supplies management ends up aiding the bottom line by 0.2 of 1 decimal point.
Right.
It's how he or she feels in being part of the company with this larger goal in mind. Which, by the way, we donate X% of our profit to this cause.
Right.
That's becoming increasingly important.
Yes.
All that laying down of the pipe, if you will, and the systems to make that receptionist feel like part of the team is work.
Right.
It doesn't just you come in and say, hey, you're part of the team, don't buy as many paper clips this week, right? And you expect that it's going to happen. It's work.
Right.
And it's hard work. And it's often the kind of work that you don't see crop up in the bottom line at the end of the quarter, which gets me on a whole.
I was going to say is that I think a big part of the problem is that we have very short-term thinking, especially in public companies.
The Dow is a curse in many ways.
Yeah.
It's a great place to raise capital, or TSX.
Yeah.
To raise capital when it's tough to find elsewhere, but it encourages a very short-term way of thinking, which is anti what I'm talking about. These are long-term corporate culture-building measures that I firmly believe, as an operator, result in significant impact on the bottom line long term.
Right.
'Cause I think culture, performance, systems, all lead to a better company, retention, not having to retrain, getting the extra mile out of people where they're working 50 hours instead of 40 because they want to.
Right.
All that stuff
Yep.
is going to lead to more profit, right? But it's
Yep.
not apparent as you spend that extra money in the quarter to put the systems in place, or you take the company thought leaders and put them towards organizational development versus how we're going to sell more phones, right? It's a trade-off.
And yet, the evidence is quite clear in the long run that that does work. Why
I
is it?
believe it's
Why is
true.
it so hard for investors to see that?
Because it's counterintuitive, you know, why haven't we made the quarter? Cut that
Yeah.
organizational development expense out of the budget. We've told our investors that we're gonna make this much profit this quarter. Yeah, but that's gonna, translate into such a healthier company down the road.
Yeah.
We have to make the quarter.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't like that part of it.
So ultimately, we need some different approach to investment as companies get
Alternative,
bigger.
what we need in Canada
Yeah.
is more money at the private stage, at the point where a company needs $1 to $5 million,
Right.
when they've proven something,
Yeah.
past the proof of concept.
Right.
Going public shouldn't be a last resort. There's a time and a place for it.
Okay.
The reason that our junior exchanges have flourished is because there's been an absence of private capital, private patient capital, that has been willing to prop this up. Now, IBM was a supporter of my partner John Eckridge
Okay.
at McLean Watson in his last fund. So there are people at IBM as a sponsor of this blog that get it.
Yes.
We need them back in the game.
Right.
Everybody got scared about technology in the last bubble in 2000, and the memories are long.
Yep.
But the time is now to reinvest. Everything has a cycle.
And do you think that's starting to happen?
The doors are creaking open. They should be being pushed open.
Cool. So what advice would you offer to entrepreneurs? I know this is tough to compress an hour-long talk into 2 minutes, but what do you think are some of the most important things for them to be focusing on to build successful, sustainable businesses?
Well, I'm most comfortable talking about digital companies.
Which is great, because that's my focus too.
So the skill that I think has lost its way a little bit is really old school direct marketing. You know, I don't care if it's a direct to consumer business or a B2B. At the end of the day, entrepreneurs need to understand that this is how much it costs me to get a customer.
Yep.
And this is how much a customer is worth to me. The difference between those two things is called a gross margin, and you need a certain amount of that to cover your operating expenses.
Yes.
The systems that go into measuring all of that, and the testing environments, and the analytics,
Yep.
I think is a skill that we were best at in the days of online, or days of subscriptions
Yes.
and American Express. The sort of publishers and Amex pioneered that whole use of data down to the penny on what a customer's behavior was.
Yep.
And those capabilities are everywhere.
Yep. What do you think?
No matter what your business is, you need
Okay.
to harness those capabilities and bring them into your product or service.
What do you think about the whole big data movement? Do you think that, I wonder if there's a risk of companies just being led astray or just
See, what's a
bombarded
buzzword?
with too much data?
Well, like any buzzword,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of risk around it, right?
Yes.
Don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but imagine the money we're going to make out of all this data we're collecting. Right?
Yeah.
You hear that a lot.
Yep.
Not so much now. I think people are waking up now, but a year ago, that was the big buzz, right?
Right.
Yeah, but the business doesn't make much sense, but look at all the data we're collecting. Okay. That sounds very familiar to me, right?
Yep.
We heard that in 99.
Yep.
It was, look, I don't know how we're going to monetize them yet, but look at all the people we've got.
Right.
Right? So trust me. Right? They'll spend somehow, some way.
Yep.
And, what was the old adage back then, give it away, give it away, give it away, go public.
Right. Yep.
So I think you have to be careful. I want to see what their vision is to monetize the interest. And the good news is the tools are there in terms of giving you real-time feedback.
Mm-hmm.
What you need to have are the people that are trained enough
Yep.
in direct marketing to understand the power of those systems and how to take the data in and present it in a way that makes sense to an investor.
Yes.
Ideally, what I'm looking for is companies that have tested 27 channels
Mm-hmm.
of customer acquisition,
Yep.
have zeroed in on 7 that acquire customers at a rate that we can make money on,
Right.
and they're ideally looking for more money just to monetize those 7 channels
Okay.
because there's room left in them, you know? They've
Right.
only just scratched the surface.
Right. Okay.
And I don't care if those channels are a sandwich board down Jasper Avenue or SEO or, you know, display or sponsorship or email or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
it's just understand, right?
Yep.
What the channel is and what you have to do to get more users.
What do you think? I mean, one of the challenges that I see and that I personally have felt quite often is the frustration of trying to niche down and get a really sharply clear target market. Do you see that often in the companies that you interview, that they're struggling
Broad.
with that? Too broad? And how do you decide when narrow is narrow enough?
Well, it's funny, you know, I haven't thought about this before you asked me this question, but I think it's a very good question. And, you know, we used to have two buckets of marketing spend at
Mhm.
Lavalife.
Yeah.
One was direct marketing, where we knew to a penny what we were getting back, and through that we were able to get a pretty good profile of our customer because they were coming in through a specific channel.
Right.
The other was brand spend.
Okay.
Right? Put out the money in the brand. We can't really measure it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But hey, a lot of people are using the product, so it must be working.
Right.
So, you know, the good thing about online dating at that time were the margins were crazy high, so we could afford to do that.
Yep.
It's expensive to build a brand. The exciting thing about online businesses for me is you can put 99% of your spending into direct marketing,
Yep.
gain an understanding of who your customers are, and if it goes viral and the brand gets created naturally, you don't have to worry so much about newspapers, billboards, TV,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because people aren't paying that close of attention anyway.
Hmm.
in my view.
Okay, that makes
That
sense.
was a rambling kind of answer, I realize.
No, but you've got some interesting thoughts there. You bring up an interesting point too about Lavalife in the early days having, you know, massive margins, and obviously more and more competitors came in. How realistic is it to be able? Well, no, let me rephrase that. How can a company decide when it's entering a market that's already got? I mean, you hear that you shouldn't enter a market where there are no competitors.
It's tough. The answer is it's tough.
Okay.
It's a great time to be a consumer. Right now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
really, the only way you overpay for something is if your time is worth more than the effort it took to find the source, right?
Right.
So that's how you overpay, right?
Yes.
So it's a great time to be a consumer, which means it's a very difficult time to sell things at
Yeah.
margin for very long.
Mm-hmm.
No secrets,
Mm-hmm.
and competition that springs out of nowhere as a result, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to move quicker,
Yep.
you have to be more innovative, and you have to continue to innovate and provide your customer, know your customer, provide them with goods and services that you know they want.
So if you have to move quicker, I mean, you talked today about having gone from 5-year plans to 1-year plans. Is 1 year even realistic anymore?
God, if it gets any less than a year, I'll retire, right? Jeez. I hope so. You know, I mean, you got to lay a plan down
Right.
because, you know, as quickly as things change, it takes time to put
things in place.
things in place, right?
Right.
You can't be hopping around all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fine line. You've got to take the information in
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to move on it while still keeping your original plan in place. How is this going to help us get to our plan, right?
Right.
Oft-asked question. How are we
Okay.
doing?
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
time to wrap it up. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate your answers
No, I
and making the
appreciate your
time.
questions. That's great.